Welcome to the live show, Truly Talkative. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and then invite my guests for the very first panel. We have Ewuradwoa Ahwoi. Welcome. Yes, yeah. My next guest is Khadija Ali. And my final guest is my very own husband, David Quagraine. So unfortunately, Ruth couldn't be with us. So welcome. Thank you guys so much for coming. I'm humbled. Thank you for watching. This season has been amazing. I've loved seeing the comments, the reactions, the feedback. It hasn't always been positive, honestly. It hasn't always been positive, but I'm glad that for the most part, it was received well. So we're going to watch a recap of, from the guests who are seated here. We'll play it back a bit. What happened? Why did the doctor say that, you weren't going to live past 70?
So I don't think it was a statement directed at me. It was just a general statement, I think, maybe based on some stats that probably he had.
Because I remember you said you didn't think that if my dad was alive, we would be married.
Yeah. There were days I would look at your face and I couldn't tell if it was fear or regrets.
I just was trying to tell her what had happened, but then she asked me a question. She was like, did he touch you? That's what she said.
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked at, we were in the hall by that time. I looked at his face. He just looked so angry and I was scared because I was like, I'm only here with this guy.
Yeah.
What's he going to do? I don't know. So then I just told her no. And then that was it. But that was the worst thing I could have done.
Right.
I should have actually said yes.
Yeah.
And then I probably would have been out of that thing like sooner than later.
A lot of the pressure has been put on women to be married. And that seems to be the lifetime achievement. Yeah. And it's like, you have all these things, but are you married? Like,
true. Yeah.
So when you essentially find your way out, you're not celebrated as though you were going in, right?
No.
And I think that it should be the same. If you're coming out of an abusive marriage, you should be hailed for coming out, having the courage to find your way out.
Yeah.
Right? Not being silenced.
Okay, so how did that make you guys feel? Let's start with you, Ewuradwoa. Watching your episode, how was that like for you?
I haven't seen that clip actually. I think it's a new.
No, it was
Really?
one of the, yeah.
Oh, then I didn't see it online.
Okay.
Yeah. So seeing it here and in front of so many people, it was quite slightly uncomfortable, to be honest. But I mean, that's my story, and I have to also accept that that's what happened. So
Yeah. So, I mean, before we move on to the other guests, like, what was the feedback? How was it received by your friends, family,
Yeah. So my friends and even people that I don't know, they received it quite well.
Okay.
From my family, they haven't necessarily spoken much about it. My family typically, we don't really speak like that, So they just simply send messages from their friends. Like my sister, for example, said, my friend said to tell you, I'm impressed with, how you left and how you handle yourself. But that's about it for the most part. My parents, I don't think they've seen it, but my dad actually follows me on social media.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm sure he's seen it, but he's not said anything.
Okay. And so that's it. Like, you don't talk about, you didn't ask maybe, Daddy, have you seen?
No, I'm not going to ask.
Yeah.
I don't intend to ask. If he brings it up, okay, we can talk about it, but I don't think I'll actually approach him to ask about it. Or my mom.
Okay. So, Kabi, how was the episode?
I mean, so for me,
I think you can just make it.
okay.
You can bring it up.
Instead of leaning
No, you can bring it
All
up.
right. Thank you. So, yeah. I mean, we discussed it a couple of times, know, that especially for my mom.
Yeah.
So it was like opening up old wounds kind of thing.
Right.
Trying to remember things that remembering things that you sort of left in the past, that kind of thing, especially that whole fall story and all that. Yeah. But Yeah, I mean, it was good talking about it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what was the feedback like from other people, friends?
I know from other people, like
family?
people have reached out to me on LinkedIn, Instagram, going, oh, obviously maybe I have sickle cell too. Your story inspired me. Those kind of things. So it's been interesting, touching.
Okay. Okay. All right. And Khadija, how about you?
It was received well by strangers in similar situations. But with the family, it was a bit difficult. I mean, just kept saying, why do you have to air your dirty laundry? But here I am again, so. Yeah.
Yeah. But how was it like? Sorry, can you get a bit closer to the mic? Yeah.
Yeah.
How was it like for you watching that?
Ooh, I was cringing the whole time. I mean, it was interesting to watch. I don't know if I'm comfortable with the sound of my own voice just yet, but yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah. So for me, when it launched, the very first episode was my husband's episode. That was Kobe, and as you already said, it was a lot for my mother-in-law. So that was personal for me as well. Opening old wounds and just like what all of you have spoken about, the fact that as Africans, our family doesn't necessarily like it when you air your dirty laundry. But for me, I don't see it as dirty laundry. It's your story. And so sharing your story, I guess, is different because of the generation we are from. But at the same time, I think it's important for us to spark these kind of conversations at home. I don't know if it sparked any conversation at home for any of you. I know for Kobe, I'm going to let you speak, but I don't think it did. But, did you guys get a chance to?
No, I mean, because it's stuff that people know about me. So it was more like sharing it with the world, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't think I said anything that anyone in my family didn't know about me, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but did it spark any conversation?
Not really. Okay, maybe one with my sister. The whole story where I fell from that school, we both couldn't remember like the actual details, So we're trying to figure out like what happened that day, that kind of thing. But nothing too deep, like, oh, is that really what you're going through? Because everybody knows,
Do they?
I mean, to be fair, on that episode as well, I didn't go so deep. Remember, I told you that I was trying to not cry and break down on the episode, right?
Yeah.
So I just kept it surface level. So it's the surface level stuff that mostly they know, people know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. And how about you, Ewuradwoa? Yeah, you were saying that it didn't spark any conversation at all at home.
At home.
Yeah.
At home, no.
No.
With
But online.
outsiders, yes. Online, yeah, it did. A lot of ladies reached out to me that they've been in similar situations. Some are currently in it. And so that's also what helped me to see the bigger picture, because as much as I'm from the family that I'm from, and they're quite known like publicly in politics, but I can't let that be a hindrance to what God has laid on my heart to share. So when people approach and it's people who are going through something similar, I try to encourage them and let them know that they can actually leave such relationships.
Nice. So today we are actually going to be talking about self-love and growth, okay? And I chose that particular topic because that is what I think transcends among all three, well, what's supposed to be four guests. When I listen to your story, I think there's been a lot of growth, and I'm sure you're still growing. Maybe we're all still growing. But the deeper issue really is self-love. Kobe, we're going to talk about the fact that I know that it's something that you struggled with because sickle cell isn't something that you would have wanted to have, but then you just happen to have it. So it's something that we discuss a lot. I always say that I'm like your unpaid therapist. So you actually have to pay for therapy with, thank God we have Dr. Carol here, but yeah, you have to start therapy. But yes, it's something that I know that you struggled with. How has it been like for you after the episode with the feedback, and has it helped with self-love in any way? Has it helped you grow?
Well, I mean, like you said, maybe I have to see Dr. Carol, but I haven't. I don't. There are certain emotions I don't really embrace. That kind of thing. I can tell that you've been trying to get me there, but I just I just go about my day. I try to live normally, that kind of thing. But I know that there are things I have to address.
Yeah.
Emotionally. You understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Exactly. Okay. Yeah. Maybe you can help me clarify a bit more.
Oh no, please clarify yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely, I mean, there's a bit more work to be done.
Yeah. But do you think you still struggle with self-love?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, obviously, like you said, it's not something I wanted for myself, right? So, how do you embrace something that was given to you that you didn't ask for? That kind of thing. Like when I was watching Ruth's episode, I understood her perfectly. Like everything she said, like I got it.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I don't know if people really get it if they don't have something they don't want. That kind of thing. But yeah. Definitely, even me myself, there's still work I have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the things that I know about you is that you are a perfectionist.
Yeah.
Like, when I say he's a perfectionist, I'm not just saying it. He really is a perfectionist. Like, everything has perfect. And so for him, he believes that he's in an imperfect body. So it's something that he struggles with. When you're a perfectionist and you see people out there, he compares himself to me. He always says, you never fall sick. I'm always sick, like I wish I had your health. Like there's so much more I would have done and things like that. So it's something that I know that he definitely struggles with. And I don't know if it would have been easier with someone else who probably was not a perfectionist. I have no idea. But I also know that in terms of faith, it's something that you've struggled with again, because one of the questions that you've always asked me was, why would a perfect God create an imperfect person? And so do you think that, because I know you're still Christian. Are you still Christian?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so how has how has that impacted your faith?
That's like a 1 hour discussion. Yeah, I mean, even when we go to church, like, usually I'd say that I'm taking you and the kids.
Yeah.
Like I literally sit there and I'm scrolling through my phone.
A bit closer.
I have to come closer. So I'm scrolling through my phone, maybe reading an article, because I feel like actually this I heard some before, but it's not really impacting my life, that kind of thing. So that's why you're asking.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean I am, but yeah.
So because I know you struggle with faith, so you believe that it's because of the sickle cell. That's why you struggle with faith.
And like you said, the perfectionist thing. You know how you're always saying I'm uptight. Like even when I look at DJ and Drew, like the kids, like, Drew has more of my personality. I wish I could be more like you and DJ. Like things don't bother you, that kind of thing. It's like maybe you're not feeling well, but you can still be happy. That kind of thing. Yeah. So yeah, maybe it's more of a personality thing than a faith thing. Yeah.
Okay. And with you, Khadija, let's move on to you. I think a bit closer to yeah. I have a feeling you wanted me to leave you out of this. So, and for you, you've also mentioned your faith and all that, and now you are transitioning into single life, isn't it? Because you're still in the process of divorce.
Yeah.
Again, back to the same question that I asked him. How has that impacted your faith, your Christian walk?
Where do I start? I feel like this journey for me has been very spiritual, in the sense that even though it seems very heavy and negative and difficult at times, I have been guided in the right direction from random strangers. I can be having the worst day ever, and somebody will just walk up to me with a message, and I can't even make this up, right? It's so deep for me because you won't find me in church every single day, but I feel like I do get messages that are intended for my life to guide me to the next stage. So it's been like sort of like an awakening for me, finding my voice, finding my courage to just say, you know what, right, enough is enough. Like, I deserve something else. And this was exceptionally challenging because I was a very passive child. If you tell me 1 + 1 is 4, I'm like, okay, yeah. It's I never really wanted to be argumentative, confrontational. I was always in the back seat. So now to be in charge and make the decisions that I feel like I deserve for my life. It feels empowering. Yeah.
And growth is something that we've discussed, you and I. We've discussed growth because you mentioned getting married quite early.
Yeah.
And at the time, you didn't really know yourself too well.
Yeah.
And so now you feel you're growing, you're discovering yourself, and you're realizing, okay, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
You know, so do you believe that impacted your move to leave the marriage?
Yeah, I mean, getting to know myself was the first step, because then I knew, right, okay, what the hell am I doing? Excuse my French, but yeah. Yeah, it was different for me. It was, it was exciting, it was awakening, it was, very spiritual. And just having the chance to take the driver's seat in my life for the first time. I'd done that for the first time in 27 years. I was in charge, and I'm like, right, I'm understanding that my decisions are mine, and that it wasn't always like that. I didn't always hear my own voice up until I had my daughter, and then I went through marriage and all of that. So I'm happy. All things considered, I'm okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you mentioned being a passive child. So how did you finally get to a point where you weren't passive anymore?
I had a baby. I mean, yeah. I think for me that was like, okay, right, I need to make decisions for someone else, So yeah, that sparked, finding my voice from advocating for like breastfeeding, working out of my job. I was making decisions for the first time, and it felt good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then back to Ewuradwoa. So for you, talking about self-love, being in an abusive relationship. Well, it's for 5 years, so it's like a marriage. Yeah, like how did you finally get to a space where you started to love yourself?
So for me, it was when I realized he actually could have ended my life. So I got to the point where I decided that no human being is worth me not living. And my parents didn't take me to Malaysia to go and die there. There are actually people who have died there, women, African women who have been killed by their partners who were abusive. So I was like, that cannot be my story. That's not my portion. So, but in terms of self-love, I actually found myself through God. So I started doubting God. I was like, does he exist? I was suicidal. I wanted to end my life, even in the relationship. And then especially afterwards as well. And then I just got to a point where I said, okay, you know what, God, show me a sign. Like, just show me that you're real. And as I took my faith more seriously and he showed up in my life, that's when I started to discover myself and learn to embrace myself and just accept who I am. Yeah. So that also influenced the love I have for myself. So now there have been a few men who have come my way after the relationship. And in the beginning stages, I'm able to spot the red flags that I ignored previously.
Okay.
So now you can't just, no one really could come and talk to me anyhow, but now you really cannot come and talk to me anyhow. Yeah, so it's a journey, and therapy helped as well to get professional help. So I advise, I know Africans, Ghanaians, we don't typically go towards that direction, but Jesus and therapy is the combination that I recommend highly, Jesus and therapy.
Yeah. I'm actually glad we have a pastor and a therapist here. So it's like, yeah, perfect. And then, again, with growth. So from there, because you were mentioned, what's it called? Being able to identify some red flags immediately. Mm-hmm. What are some of these red flags that one should look out for? Okay.
So it mainly has to do with how the person treats you. Things like, are they consistent? Everyone can talk. As long as you can form words, you can talk. But do they back it up with action? If he says he's going to do something, does he actually do it? And if he says that he loves you, he's concerned about you, do his actions actually prove that he cares about you? So don't just take what they are saying. I know it sounds good to hear, but, for everyone here, just listen, and not only listen, but look at what they're doing. And I see that there are men in the audience as well. So if you are the man who is also, giving some warnings to a certain lady, or if a lady is talking to you and, saying certain things to you, just watch how she's acting, watch how he's acting, and then pay attention. Things are patterns, okay? So if you repeat yourself, maybe one time, okay, we are all human beings, we make mistakes. Twice, okay, I can kind of overlook it. But 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, at that point, it's a pattern. So when you realize that it's being repeated more often than not, you need to take a step back and don't be afraid to lose people. Do not be afraid to lose people. Like, if you lose yourself, that's the worst thing that can happen.
Yeah.
You can always get over someone. You can. It seems impossible when you're in it, but you will recover. Heartbreak, Charlie, it's not easy, but you will make it through. Yeah, you make it through. And forget about society. Forget about what people think, honestly. There's so much at stake. You're so valuable. And just, it's not worth trying to impress people. Social media, Charlie, forget all that and just focus on yourself and God.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And again, did you read some of the comments from your video?
Yeah, I did.
You read some of the comments? Okay. Yeah, I was actually going to read some of the comments, but I was like, no, let me just, I decided to keep all the comments, positive and negative. Yeah. But you wanted to mention something?
The one that someone said is this so... Well, my father is Khadija Ahwoi. He's my dad. And somebody put that comment there that isn't this Khadija Ahwoi's daughter or something along those lines. And we spoke about it, and I spoke about it, but she said, okay, she's not going to delete it. And for me, I was like, okay, well, I mean, the person has put it there. Like, I am his daughter, but, you know, like, why is that even relevant in this conversation?
Yeah.
We're having, but he chose to, like, point it out, and that's my reality. So, yes, I am his daughter, and that's what it is.
Yeah, so there was actually one where someone was, I think the person might know your abuser. So the person was speaking in favor of. Yeah, you didn't. Yeah, it was quite recently on the. Did anyone see it?
No.
Oh, okay. So it was on a YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, and what do you say to people who say, okay, there are two sides of the story? Because that's the angle the person was coming from, sharing his side of the story as well. And so, what do you say to people like that? Because now you're being made to seem as if, oh, you're painting him in this way, and he wasn't that way, and then you also played a part in the abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you say to that as well?
So that, So, you know, when it comes to injustice, right, there's this quote or a saying that if you're silent in the face of injustice, you're on the side of the oppressor. Yeah. So what I have been through and what many other people have been through, when we get the courage to speak up, is not to paint somebody as all bad, but that has been our reality. You weren't there when the guy did so many things I won't get into, and there's no point in defending myself and my story. And this is actually is a bit annoying, to be honest. As I'm speaking right now, I'm just like, who in the world is that? Yeah, but I'll take it to God. So now, like, I will deal with you in the spirit. So yeah. But I think for those who can't speak up, this is where I will actually come in and say, don't pay attention to those who are trying to say that's not what happened, or the person is a good person, and you know your reality. They try to invalidate you. And one thing that you need to learn is how to validate yourself. So all the times that you were in that relationship and the person tried to say it's your fault, I'm doing this because of that. If you didn't do X, Y, Z, I wouldn't have done A plus C. Whatever the case is, own your story. Know that what you experienced is valid, and don't let anybody ever invalidate your experience.
I love that. Yeah, and the last thing I wanted to ask is, you mentioned on the episode that a lot of times when they come, there's a lot of love bombing, right? And then you even define what that was, where it's almost like you're overwhelmed with love, like you're just like, doing everything right.
Yeah.
So how do you spot the red flags at the beginning, especially if everything is so perfect?
Okay. In the very beginning, it's quite tough because the red flags are not really there in the very beginning. But after a while, you may start to notice how they speak to people. Okay. So aside them showering you with affection and love and whatever thing that they realize that you would like, when that phase or stage passes, look at how they speak to other people. Because it usually starts with how they relate with others. For me, it was how he related to waiters and people who were in like the service industry. So you guys can relate, eh? Yeah, so we go to restaurants. So to that person, listen to the, feedback and audience if the mic picks up anyway. Yeah, so just pay attention to how they relate to other people, because very soon it will turn on you. And that's like one of the major red flags. How do they relate to other people? And then also this verse, so I think it's 1 Corinthians 13, 4-8 maybe, the one that says love is patient, love is kind. So there's this thing where they say take out the love and then replace the person's name, with that. Yeah. If the person can't match up to most of them, maybe take a step back from that. And also as, individuals, self-worth is always important. So you can also put your name in there. Are you patient? Are you kind? There's some things that I'm also working on myself. And a lot of baggage that I carried from that relationship, I'm still like, letting it go, and then upbringing as well. So I would say just paying attention to patterns and then also keeping God in the equation as well. Yeah.
Okay, nice. I like that. Now move on to you, hobby. So when we got married, looking at your what's going on?
When she said that thing, right, I remember at the early stages when we were dating, I took you out one time and you blasted some winter. Eh? I was actually worried. When she said that thing, I was trying to keep from laughing. Yeah, but it wasn't a red flag anyway.
But he got the order off.
Yeah, they got the order wrong. So, I mean, like Eno doesn't let anyone get my order wrong when we go out. But then later I realized that's a good thing.
So, So I think one of the things that I noticed about you, and I've realized that it's also I don't know if it's an introverted thing, I don't know what it is, but I've noticed that it's like if you are displeased with something, you say, oh, it's fine. And I'm like, no, but it's not fine. Because on the way home, I'm the one you're going to complain to. Yeah, you probably reject me, you eat the food, like, let's not go back to that restaurant again. I'm like, yeah, maybe we should speak up so that next time they don't, but yeah, I mean, I think.
Yeah, red flag. Right?
Yeah. Okay, fine. Okay, so when you got married, right? One of the things that I noticed, at first, so when we got married, I was noticing some of your character traits, and what I've always said is I could not believe that before we even got married, the first thing that anyone told me was, oh yeah, you know he has sickle cell, right? So I already knew that before we got together. Fast forward, we got married, all that, and then I was seeing certain things like you sleeping for long hours, not trying to get out of bed, things like that. And I'm like, so I thought, okay, no, he's definitely lazy. I mean, what is it? And then, I read more on it, realized, oh, it's actually, part of, having sickle cell and things like that. And so I give you more grace and all that. But then I noticed that with our son Drew, who is just like you, who does not have sickle cell. But so I was like, okay, like at some point I was like, okay, so is this sickle cell? Is this, like...
So maybe this might be the time. I mean, look, so sometimes I know I'm a set to it, but then I use a sickle cell.
Yeah.
So I know, I like sleeping, obviously. Yeah. I don't like going out a lot. But you like going out all the time.
Yeah, true.
Like DJ,
Yeah,
like you can have a Saturday. I know I have the whole day. Then be like, actually 4 o'clock. Let's go and do this. That I'll be like, oh no, I'm not feeling well. Or something.
Yeah.
But sometimes honestly, even me myself, I can't tell. Like, is it my personality or is it
Yeah, that's true. That's
fair. Yeah,
that's true. But you even told me to even get Drew checked.
Yeah.
At some point, he said, no, I think him. And when we checked, he was, So then we realized, okay, then I guess it's just how you are.
Yeah.
But, in terms of growth and how you were before, I mean, because it was much worse before, and how you are today, which I'm guessing health-wise, I mean, I don't know if I can speak for you, but I think you're much better now. Or what do you think?
I think so, yeah. I mean, like I said, it's about... Should I say at the point hope came, was part of the equation. So, for example, I was talking to one of my friends I did my master's with, and we're talking about how literally I would go clubbing almost every week, and I would get drunk every week constantly. Then I ended up in the hospital one time. I'm sure my mom will watch this and now realize that it was because I was drinking. And again, I at that time as well, I said it was a sickle cell, but I was drinking a lot. You know what I'm saying? Because at that time, I didn't, we're dating, but I didn't think we'd get married and have kids, that kind of thing. So
this is the first time here. I thought we were going to...
Yeah. Kelly, let me be honest more. It's as if I'm also on stage with you. I can't hear the woman. Yeah, that I'm getting married, I'm going to have kids, then it's like, okay, don't drink so much, don't be exactly, don't, if you can eat healthy, at least try, that kind of thing. Even things I didn't like drinking, those green juices and things, I started forcing to drink it more. So, yeah, I'll say hope, maybe. That's what came in.
And finally, Khadija, where are you today? Like emotionally, psychologically, everything. Where are you today?
There are ups and downs, and there are days where I'm just like, oh my God, like what is happening? There are days where I'm like, you know what, I'm ready for like everything else. So I'm in between up and down. Yeah, I'm in between up and down, figuring it out still.
Like that
trying to understand, It's like, oh, I have this little quote that I say to myself, think with logic, not emotion. And sometimes I'm just like, that's out of the window. Like, let's go, But yeah, it's a bit of both.
Okay.
There are some days that I can rise above stuff, and there are days where I'm just like, nope, I'll stay here.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so that brings us to the end of this panel discussion. I don't know if any of you have any final words, because we're going to allow the experts to also weigh in on what we just shared. Do you have any final words before we wrap up? No final words from anyone?
I think
yeah.
Me?
Yes.
Okay. I'd just like to say thank you for this opportunity. Yeah.
Okay. You're welcome. And thank you too. I was very honored to have all of you share your stories because, again, the culture that we were brought up in, we are not allowed to share some of these really deep, important stories. And I know that it wasn't easy for, some of you. And I'm just glad that, number one, you guys actually came back to continue to share your story, but I'm glad that you made the impact that you did, because the feedback that I received from, all the different episodes it was very emotional. Like people were touched, people felt seen, people felt you were sharing their own stories, and I think it's also important for people to, people like to idolize people, where it's almost like, oh, as for you, your life is perfect, you don't have any issues and things like that. And now hearing some of these stories, it's like, wow. So let me tell you something before we even wrap up. Some feedback I got about you. I realized that people actually thought that abuse only happens to people who are not privileged. Yeah. So and so it was like, oh, so wow. Like even Ewuradwoa, that was the thing. It was almost like, wow. And it was sad that it had to be like that, because it was like, you had to go through that for people to know that, you don't have to, come from, poverty to go through something like that. So people stay in abusive relationships for money, for, security, things like that. And so when the person has it all, why would they even stay? So that's how you know that then it's deeper than just physical. It's also psychological and all that. So that's why I'm happy that you shared that bit. Because you shared the cycle of abuse, and then you mentioned that it's also emotional, psychological, all that. So, I'm just honored that you guys came on. Thank you, Raja. Thank you, David. Thank you, Khadija.
Thank you.
God bless you. So please, you can have your seats in front, and then we'll have Dr. Carol and Pastor Nhyira on the stage. Okay, so welcome, Pastor Nhyira. I've never called you Pastor Nhyira. I always call you Nhyira. It's weird. Let me just call you Nhyira.
Yeah, I think you should survive. Yeah.
Hi, Nhyira. Hi, Dr. Carol.
Hi.
How are you guys doing?
Good. I think when I got the call from Eno, she said, I'm inviting you as an expert. I'm like, on what?
Yes.
And she's like, to talk about the church. And I said, uh-oh. Because I think the church has a lot of, the reputation is not that good, especially in our generation. So to be able to talk for the church is huge, but we'll see what God will do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Dr. Carol, how about you?
I'm glad to be here. I think, like you said, the conversations are these conversations are so important.
Yeah.
And, I would watch each episode, I'd be thinking to myself, I'm really grateful for everyone who was willing to share their story because, these are the kind of things that people come and sit in my couch and talk about, right? So the depth in terms of vulnerability and just the willingness to open up and share, I think is amazing. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for honoring my invitation. So let's start with you, Doc. What did you think about what we just discussed, self-love and growth and what they shared? What is your take on it?
I think I'm excited we're having this particular conversation because I think one of the things that we don't talk about definitely is the idea that we are actually in relationship with ourselves, right? Right from when we're born till we die. Like that's the one person you will always be in relationship with. And so I think, Ewuradwoa, it was you that was saying that, over and above everybody else, right? It's making sure that we're in a good place with ourselves. And the idea of self-love is interesting because it has a lot to do with, first of all, how you define love, right? A lot of people talk about, well, I want to, love myself more. But what does that mean? Because love means different things to different people. And so recognizing that it has to be an intentional choice, right? To be in relationship with self, to love yourself, it has to be an intentional daily choice, right? And it involves all kinds of things: self-awareness, acceptance, self-worth, self-esteem, and just being intentional about nurturing that relationship. So I'm excited that we're having this conversation, definitely.
Thank you. How about you, Pastor Nhyira?
I think that almost every episode spoke to me.
Okay.
At different points. Definitely Kobe's episode spoke to me. Because my husband and I are both AS.
Yeah.
And so it was very, very interesting, the perspectives that he was given. And when it comes to the sleeping bit, I don't know if it's a man thing. I was going to say like a husband thing, but maybe it's just a man thing. I didn't know my husband slept a lot till our honeymoon. Dude was sleeping the whole time. And but I think that spoke to me. There was a comment that you made.
Okay.
I know you were not the focus of it, but there was something you said, and I think I also related to Ewuradwoa. I think that people that come from families that parents are known and that are in the public eye tend to face a different kind of scrutiny.
Yeah.
And I connected with that a lot. So, yeah.
Okay.
So thank you for sharing your stories. I think the other Ruth as well. I'm a pastor's kid.
Yes.
So I think I also connected a lot with what she was going through.
So I definitely wanted you to, Nhyira, because one, yes, you're a pastor's daughter. You've been in the public eye. You know what it's like to, live in a home where everyone sort of upholds your family, your parents, and all that, and then you're supposed to toe a certain line. You surprisingly turned out to be a pastor as well. You're surprised. Yeah, surprising, but okay. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
So I felt you will be very relatable, and so we'll get into that.
Yeah.
And with you, Dr. Carol, as well, I feel you tell the truth. We'll tell it as it is. Like on social media, in fact, you're calmer in person. Like anytime you talk, I'm like, wow, you're so soft-spoken. But on social media, it's like ruthless. And I like that you shared, stuff like that. Anyway, so let's move on to the first question. So, Doc, how do we do better at self-acceptance and loving ourselves, like reaching self-acceptance?
I think it could be a different process for everyone, but I think there are certain things that definitely has to be present. It's really impossible to accept and love something that you don't know, right? And a lot of us, as much as we think we've been with ourselves our whole lives, a lot of people really don't know themselves in terms of figuring out who they are. A lot of times separate from our families, our parents, and the relationships that are deeply influential and have been. A lot of us don't know who we are. So one of the very first steps when you start to talk about self-love is just figuring out how well you know yourself. I'll use myself as an example. For the longest time, I thought purple was my favorite color. Something as simple as my favorite color, right? I thought I really, really liked purple. And 32 years into my life, I was getting married, and I was sitting down with the lady who was designing my dress, and I made a decision not to wear white on my wedding day, because I don't like white. Sorry. I don't, white is not, okay, no, I don't like white. It's not a color that so I decided I wasn't wearing white on my wedding day. And so my parents said, okay, so I should wear my favorite color. And really, my favorite color is red and black. And African parents are like, you're not going to wear black on your wedding day. You're not going to wear red on your wedding day. Pick something else. So then I started to this designer. She's like, okay, so what's other color? I said, well, I like purple. And then she started showing me like different shades of purple. And she's, showing me. And she's like, which one? And she got to the end of the row, and I was like, none. And she's like, but if purple is your favorite color, like one of these shades should have really jumped at you. And so it really got me thinking, and I realized that I believed I liked purple because my mother liked purple, right? And I was the only girl, and so my mom and I had this bond. She used to dress us up in like matching lace, purple stuff. All my pictures, I'm in purple, she's in purple, and so for all my life, I believed I really, really liked purple. And it sets me down just thinking about just even to things like as minute as that, like my favorite color, right? Which, would influence the kind of things that I would wear and things like that. I realized it wasn't me, and it wasn't necessarily a choice that I had made. And at that age, and I was a psychologist and I was done with school, I was practicing, even I realized I hadn't really figured out who I was separate from these, really influential relationships in my life. So it has to start there in terms of figuring out who am I, right? What do I like? What do I really not like? If I liked this when I was a child, is it possible that as an adult it's changed and I don't like it anymore? But kind of like spending time with yourself, having conversations with yourself, really getting into who am I? Who am I evolving to be? Who am I today? Who was I yesterday? How is it different? How is it changing? It has to start with awareness and a growing sense of who you are. Because when you start to be aware, then you can start working on accepting all that you're recognizing is there. And a lot of us struggle with acceptance because we often think acceptance means we're condoning something, right? So a lot of people will say to me, well, if I discover that I have anger issues, how am I supposed to accept that? Like, I don't want to. And acceptance isn't condoning. Acceptance is just saying that something is as it is, right? So this is black. All right, I'm holding a black fan. That's all that it is. Nothing about whether or not I think is cool that is black, or I wish it was a different color. But acceptance is just saying that this is what it is. And when you can get to know yourself and you can get to the point where you're saying, this is who I am for whatever reason, and I can identify how I got to be who I am, then you have a better chance of liking, right? Being able to offer compassion, being able to, live with yourself, being able to feel differently about yourself. And so I think love has to start there. It has to start with awareness. It has to start with acceptance. And then it also has to then move on to being intentional about daily relationship with yourself. How am I talking to myself? How am I treating myself? How am I taking care of myself? How am I, responding to my needs, honoring my needs? All of that stuff has to, much like we would relate to somebody else, being intentional about that relationship with self.
I love that. Thank you. And Pastor Nhyira, how about you? Same question.
Tell me the question.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask.
I'll so engrossed to the answer.
How do we get to a point where, how do we get to self-acceptance? Like, how do we get there?
I think I totally agree with everything that Dr. Carol just said. I think, and I'm totally in line with Jesus and therapy. So everything that she said, I love.
Yeah.
I think for me as a Christian, I get to understand myself when I understand that there's a creator of me.
Right.
I didn't just appear on this earth.
Right.
There's someone that loved me even when I didn't know me. And so in order to know me, like if she was talking about the fan, to be able to understand the fan, you have to read the manual from the person who created it. And so for me, if I want to truly love who I am, I have to go to who created me and ask me, who am I?
Yeah.
And what are the things you love about me? So I get to know, and then that's what I love. So that's what I think about, in addition to what she had said.
Yeah. So moving on to Kobe, right, where he doesn't necessarily accept himself. And being a Christian and knowing that, oh, there's a perfect God, so why would the perfect God create an imperfect human? How do you navigate that as a Christian?
I think that what's important to understand, if you read Genesis 1, the Bible talks about the fact that whenever God created something, he called it good. And so there is no way that a good God can create imperfection.
Okay.
When God created human beings, he didn't call us bad. He called us good. What happened in the Garden of Eden is that Adam and Eve sinned. And by the way, God called us good because his image is within us. So when he looks at us, he sees his image. And it cannot be bad because he's good. But when sin entered the earth, it distorted the image of God within us. And so we became imperfect as a result of sin. But the thing about sin is that when Adam and Eve sinned, God cursed not Adam and Eve, God cursed the earth. So the earth became imperfect. So now we are imperfect because of sin, living in an imperfect world. I think that usually when people are struggling with the conversation, and I struggle with it, right? A good God, but there's suffering. A good God, but there's evil. Why would you allow it? I think that when it comes to the conversation of evil, I don't want to go too theological, so I'll talk about suffering, because I think that's what we are really dealing with. I think the real question should be, is God the kind of God that would walk by me when I'm going through suffering? Am I serving a God who is not afraid of suffering? And so you look at the story of Jesus, who is God made flesh. And the Bible talks about the fact that Jesus did not escape suffering. Jesus actually endured suffering on the cross. So that makes us know that God accepts that because of our sin, there'll be suffering on the earth. There's suffering that human beings do to each other, and there's just suffering that's natural evil. That is the cause of natural evil. So if Jesus walked through suffering, and God didn't take it away from him, I'm going to walk through suffering. God is not afraid of suffering. But if you read scripture, Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane. And Jesus' struggle in Gethsemane is about, I don't want to endure this suffering. It's too heavy for me. It's not even my suffering, like, honestly, it's these people. It's not my, this weight is too much. Like, dude, you are my father. Do something about this. It's not a vibe. And so Jesus is here saying that let this cup pass over me.
Yeah.
But he gets to a point and he's like, you know what? But I have to go through the suffering.
Yeah.
Because the result of the suffering is that they'll have a relationship with you. That image of God that is distorted will be restored. And so Jesus sees that his suffering is necessary. But Jesus' question is that, but don't leave me alone. He knows that he can lean on God because God is going to walk next to him in the suffering. And so for me as a believer, when I think of suffering, I think about imperfection. Sometimes I ask God, I've been through stuff, and I'll probably never get answers on this side of heaven. But I still know that I serve a God that will walk next to me in the midst of suffering. If Jesus walked through it, God is not going to take it magically away. I think sometimes once I know that God is going to walk next to me, he's going to give me the strength to walk through it. And I also know that there is a reward for my suffering. So for everyone that shared, the reason why we connected with each and every single one of you is because you are going through suffering. But you don't let the suffering overcome you. And that is your testimony. That is why your story is a testimony. The fact that I serve Christ is that he went through suffering. He died on a cross. and just for me.
Yeah.
So I can connect with his suffering and know that, yes, I would suffer, but God is going to walk next to me. And my suffering is actually possible, or my suffering can actually help someone else. I think that is how I see suffering.
Yeah.
There are certain questions that unfortunately I can't answer. I think the church sometimes tells us that once you give your life to God, everything will be rosy and it will be beautiful. And I mean, I don't know about you, but living in this Ghana, we all know. Like, I don't have to talk plenty.
Yeah.
We are all suffering.
Yeah.
You know, even if you're not suffering, the doomsday alone will tell you that actually the suffering is equal. So I think it's knowing that in the midst of my pain, in the midst of my suffering, I have a God who is right next to me.
I love that.
And he's going to walk through with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Let me just also, I just want us to continue. So how do you continue to have faith even when you don't see a change in the physical?
Yeah, and I think that's a good question. When my husband and I knew that we're heirs, you know, I think I've shared this before, you know, we're praying, God, you can do it. You can change this thing. Hey. And we are both pastors. We're like, let's join our faith together. And like, we always think about faith as like these muscles you have in the spirit.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't turn out the way you're like, okay, let us unpack what just happened. I think I've gotten to understand faith as believing in God.
Okay.
Not that my circumstance would change, but that even in the midst of a circumstance that doesn't change, I have faith in a good God. That even if I don't physically get healing on this side, he will walk through with me in my suffering, but there's hope because the scripture talks about we have eternity with him. And eternity, there's no sorrow. Eternity, there's no pain. So my faith is in God. And that is why, for me, when I go through things that don't turn out sweet, that don't turn out the way I want it to turn out, I still tell myself, but your faith is not in the circumstance. Your faith is in God, and his word does not change. So I think that's how I walk through it. If I don't see any physical manifestation, I've had loved ones that we've buried. I've had family members that have walked through sickness. And you always pray that to be taken out. But scripture says that even though you walk through the fire, I'll be with you. If you walk through the waters, I'll be with you. And that is the word that I'm sticking on. So my faith is in who God is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And my final question to you, Dr. Carol, is what does growth really look like?
That's a good one. That's a good one. I think growth can look like a bunch of different things, but I don't think there's any growth without change, right? Change that sometimes is, externally manifested, but not always. It can very much also be an internal thing. But maybe I'll just talk from a psychological perspective, right? So growth from that perspective is essentially just being able to change. For example, people come into therapy and they'll come with specific things they want to be able to see some change around. Okay. Some of that stuff is manifested in behavior externally, and some of it is internal, around things like how they process their emotions, how they process their thoughts, their inner dialogue, things like that. And so in those kinds of situations, growth is, are you able to get to the point where you see the kind of change that you want to be able to see, whether it has to do with, internal stuff or external stuff, whatever it might be. Essentially, am I able to move from point A to point B, right? That is how we would define growth. But also understanding that, I like to use this example of, I'm married to an engineer, a building engineer and building technologist. And when we're building our home, the most boring part of it was when they were pouring the foundation. And I don't really understand how those things work because I choose not to. It's quite boring. But he would go there and they'll pour all this concrete and then they'd leave it for a couple of days, right? And I'm like, what is happening? Because I was eager to get to I want to see the building, windows in, now let's get to the exciting stuff. And he was explaining that, it's one of the most important parts of the process, because when you pour all this concrete, you need to give time for it to really settle, right? And kind of because there are all these holes and little spaces, pockets of air that you really want all the concrete to kind of really settle in. But when you're looking at it, just standing and looking at it, you don't see anything happening, right? It doesn't seem as though we are moving forward. You guys have poured this thing for days. We are just standing here. I want to see the structure go up. But something is happening that is an important part of how strong the structure is going to be. Actually, the most important part, right? So for a couple of days, you're not doing anything. It looks like nothing is happening, but something very important is happening. And sometimes growth can look like that. Because I find that people are often very impatient, especially if I want to get to point A to point B. We are very focused on, I can only say I've grown when I've gotten to point B, right? As long as I've not gotten there and I've not seen what I want to see, then nothing is happening, right? But the reality is, to get to point A, to get to point B from point A, you have to take a step, right? And sometimes a step can be a really tiny step, and sometimes we're taking massive leaps towards our goals. But whether it's a tiny step, tiniest of steps that maybe only you know and nobody else can see, or you're leaping and running to point B, all of that is growth, right? Because all of that is shifting and moving you towards, away from where you don't want to be, and kind of towards where it is that you need to go. But that speaks more to intentional growth. Now, the reality also is, whether or not we are intentional about it, we're growing. Right? In terms of our body, our minds, interacting with the world, interacting with experiences, and, we're literally growing. We're learning things, we're unlearning things. But that is dangerous, because a lot of times we don't have an awareness of it. And so whether or not growth is happening for good, we often assume that growth is good. Right, all forms of growth is good, but not necessarily, right? Sometimes we can unconsciously and consciously grow in certain things that aren't necessarily positive. So I think that, once again, there has to be a certain level of awareness and intentionality to it.
Thank you so much. So we're going to invite a few questions. We have a few minutes for some questions. If you have any questions for our experts and then also for our panelists, you can ask